Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Q&A on CYC. Tonight we're going to talk about the very sensitive and difficult subject of suicide. People who struggle with suicidal thoughts and feelings are struggling with tremendous emotional pain. It's said it's like a pebble being thrown into a pond, and the ripple effects go on and on. Tonight we are joined again by wonderful Dr. Samir Ibrahim. Welcome, Dr. Samir.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And also Rob Azmy, who is working in hospitality and previously a school teacher. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you for having me again.
It's our blessing. Before we get into the conversation, we're just going to watch a very short video. So please stay tuned and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Well, it's described as one of the most beautiful bridges in the world, but San Francisco's stunning Golden Gate Bridge also has an awful reputation. Over the past 80 years, 2,000 people have taken their own life at the famous landmark, but remarkably, about 35 people have survived, and one of those survivors is Kevin Hines. He's since turned his life around and is on a mission now to provide hope for people who are going through some really dark times. And Kevin joins us now from New York. Welcome, Kevin. Nice to have you here, Kevin. Can you take us back to that day, to that moment when you stepped off the Golden Gate Bridge? I read that you, within a millisecond of jumping off the bridge, you had instant regret.
Wow. Instant regret for my actions, wanting nothing more than to survive what I had attempted and believing it was too late. It was the worst day of my life.
In fact, all of the survivors have said the same thing, that they instantly regretted their decision to take their own life.
That's right. 19 of the 36 have come forward to say that they had exactly the same instant regret that I experienced. And that goes across all means of suicide. It's recounted over and over again.
Now, Kevin, why did you decide to commit suicide, and how did you manage to survive when you jumped?
You know, it wasn't so much of a decision as was a compulsion to take my life by suicide because of pain. I was in such insurmountable mental pain that I believed I had not one other option but to die. I was hearing voices, auditory hallucinations in my head telling me I had to do that act. And it was regrettable. I'm glad I survived. And what led me to survive was a couple of things. A woman driving by called the Coast Guard, happened to have a friend in there. They arrived to my position within less than the time I would set in hypothermia. In the water, a sea lion came to my aid, circled beneath me, and bumped me up, keeping me afloat until that Coast Guard boat arrived. In the hospital, the back surgeon, one of the foremost in his field, wasn't supposed to be there that day. He took what I missed severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. Yeah. And he took that surgery and created a whole new, brand new procedure for me. It's in a medical journal, first of its kind. I'm very lucky to be here in many, many ways.
Oh my God, it almost sounds like divine intervention, Kevin. Do you feel like you were just incredibly lucky, as you said, or do you feel like there was some sort of purpose to you being saved?
I'm a man of great faith. I always have been, raised that way. I believe what happened to me was absolutely a miracle.
Wow. And you're working on a documentary called The Ripple Effect about suicide. Is that what drove you to do it? Do you feel like this was your calling?
This is my calling, being able to go and travel the world, sharing a message of hope so other people can try to help themselves heal and find recovery is a beautiful mission to have. Suicide, The Ripple Effect is a film I've been trying to make for 4 years. We're finally almost there, and it is something that is going to spread light from 6 countries all around the world of people sharing their stories of help and hope and healing so other people can recognize that they can be here tomorrow.
Welcome back, viewers. Dr. Samir, it said for every suicide there are many attempts. Can you please explain the different types of suicide?
It's actually said for every 1 suicide, and this is Australian statistics, there are 30 attempts. So if we have a number of deaths by suicide, which is a very sad thing to say, we had 30 times people who tried and they couldn't. But I want to highlight the difference between two things. Number one, people who attempt suicide, and number two, people who have gestures of suicide with no real intentions to kill themselves, but they do this as a cry for help, and these people have to be taken very seriously. Yes. Because if it is a cry for help and they don't get the help, next time it might not be a cry for help. So anyone talking about suicide, thinking about suicide, has to be taken very, very seriously. Yes, some people are more serious than others, some people are more planning than others, but it doesn't mean that even people who are just doing gestures of suicide, even if it's for attracting attention, even those people have to be taken very seriously and have to have the proper help that they deserve.
Thank you, Dr. Samir.
So in your professional opinion, Dr. Samir, what are the main causes of suicide?
Suicide could be classified in many ways. If you go to any literature, you will have different opinions about that. But I will try to summarize in a simplistic way between two different types. One is the suicide that is due to a psychiatric disorder, deep depression, schizophrenia, and sometimes delusional disorder, and sometimes organic brain syndromes. Don't worry about all these names, but these are names for psychiatric disorders. Mm-hmm. And there is another type of suicide where people suicide for the lack of ability to cope with life vicissitudes. So it's a poor coping skill repertoire that they have. Mm-hmm. So if each and every one of us has a number of coping skills, which we call defense mechanisms, these defense mechanisms are like the immune system in our body. The immune system protects us against diseases, microbes, viruses, bacteria, and the immune system in a psychological point of view are the coping skills. Mm-hmm. So whenever we are attacked by any distress or anything going wrong or stress, we have all these coping skills coming up to protect us from being disintegrated, if you wish, from falling apart, from collapsing in a psychological sense. And when people don't have enough coping skills, this is when they think of the easy way out, as we say. Some people call the suicide thinking as the escapism. They try to escape. Mm-hmm. So instead of confronting, dealing with the issues, even if there is a mistake, they put up with it and they change their lives and so on. Instead of doing all of this, they run away into thinking of finishing their lives. Mm-hmm. I repeat, even people who are not 100% serious about it, genuine about it, even those people, they need to be taken very serious. Mm-hmm. And they need to get the proper help.
Yeah.
Can I ask Dr. Samir, the link between depression and suicide, how prevalent is that?
I don't have a figure in mind where it tells me the percentage of people thinking of suicide when they are depressed. Wouldn't surprise me if it's way above 50%. But I know that suicide, the actual suicide, successful attempts of suicide in depression is roughly around the 9%, which is very high when you think about it. And again, I'm talking about not the dysphoric normal mood of depression. I'm talking about the genuine, melancholic, biologically determined, genetic, deep, major depression. This is where the 9% comes. Yes. But people who have other types of depression, the percentage is much, much, much lower.
Okay.
But the bad depression, the chances are roughly about 9%.
Fair enough. And we sometimes see in the media of people, very famous actors, actresses, fashion stylists, where they appear to have everything in life that you could possibly want, and they appear very happy. How can we, as laymen, identify someone within our social circle who may be having those thoughts, but it's not obvious because they have all the right things for a great life? You wouldn't expect that from them. And if we do suspect someone, how do we approach them?
Okay, I'll answer the first part first. The presence of depression, the presence of suicide is not related to the wealth in life. It's the wrong impression that when people have everything they don't suicide. It's actually the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big theory of a guy called Maslow, and I'm pretty sure many would know about him. And Maslow had the needs for somebody divided into groups. And according to him, the more you satisfy the basic needs and the one above and the one above and the one above, your depression and anxiety is much less. Yes. And the suicide is much less. This was according to him.
Mm-hmm.
Following his publication, I think a couple of years or so, there was a very interesting publication by the World Health Organization where they showed that in the higher personal income countries, the rate of suicide is the highest. And from memory, it was Scandinavian countries. So they said, Maslow, you tricked us. You're saying that if you have all the basic needs, you shouldn't think of depression and suicide. And it went into debate and debate. And then Maslow himself had a publication thereafter where he said, look, on top of my hierarchy that maybe many people know how it looks like the pyramid of Saqqara. Mm-hmm. It's one on top of the other. On top of all of that, there is something else that needs to be satisfied. And he called it at that time the vacuum. He said there is, as if there is a vacuum, and this vacuum is not satisfied. Even if you satisfy your basic needs, you can still have depression and suicide. I think he stopped short talking about spirituality. I don't think he was courageous enough to mention spirituality.
Yeah.
And this is extremely important. And I remember this was in the early 70s or mid-70s. I remember when I was back in Egypt, I used to see people who are extremely wealthy, people who don't know how much they have in the bank, and they are deeply, deeply depressed and had other psychological conditions. And I would see people who are quite poor, and they had all this nice smile on their face, and they are extremely happy. Mm-hmm. I remember one day I stopped by a guardian of a building, and we know that in the past people who used to be called al-Bawab are people who are extremely poor. Mm-hmm. And I remember I stopped because he was sitting next to his wife, and they both appeared to be extremely peaceful with a lovely smile on their face. I actually stopped and asked him, why do you have peace? And his answer was, I have everything in life. And I looked at where he lived, and he was living just under the staircase. And I can't remember how many children he had, but he was extremely happy and satisfied. And he used to say, I have what is enough to eat, and I have what is enough to drink. And it reminded me with what St. Paul said. If we have enough of what we eat and drink and clothes, we have to be satisfied with that. And I said, my God, this guy is just proving what St. Paul said 2,000 years ago as very truth. Reality is, satisfying spiritual needs is everything, is the peace itself. living with the Lord is the peace itself.
Yes.
In my young years, I had the chance to see Abuna Abd al-Masih al-Ethiopi, al-Habashi. I saw him only once. And this person used to live in a cave in the middle of nowhere. I still remember the peace on his face and the peace, the how he was talking. And once we arrived there, and I arrived with someone who was a close friend to him, or who visited him quite oftenly, he sat us down and started to talk about a chapter from the Gospel of St. John, as if he was just obsessed with that, just thinking about that. So before the how are you and it's hot today or whatever, he was just talking about that and talking about the different verses. People don't need to satisfy their materialistic needs. And it just happened that today's Gospel was the Samaritan woman. And the Lord told her a very important verse. Everyone who drinks from this water thirsts again. Everybody who is drinking from the satisfaction of anything materialistic will thirst again. Who is this person who says, I have enough? Show me one person who says, I have enough. If you have 10,000, you want 100. If you have 100,000, you want 1,000,000. If you have 1,000,000, you want 10 million. If you want 10 million, you always see that there are people who have billions and trillions above you. Who is this person who is well satisfied?
Yes.
On the contrary, the more you have, the more you live in anguish, because there is somebody who is better than you, and no one is really satisfied. That is why satisfying the materialistic needs does not mean living in peace. But satisfying the spiritual needs, regardless of how much material we have, means a lot.
It seems to me like our human nature is that we always want more. We want to improve. We want to better our life as we go along. So I think the beauty in having Christ in our life is that the more we want, the more we do, the more we get filled with His peace. There's no limit to how much we can go with our wanting, our yearning, our desiring of the Heavenly Father. Whereas with material things, as you said, where
They're
does it
just
stop?
temporary fixes.
Yes, yes, which is, again, I think the difference between happiness, which is temporary, and joy, which is what the Lord Jesus Christ gives. So it's beautiful.
Just a quick comment on what you said. I remember asking Father Tadros Yaoub Malati, and I think many people know of him, asking him about that many years ago. And he said something very interesting. He said, we are created in His image. And because the Lord is infinite, so our soul is infinite. And we cannot be satisfied with materialistic things because they are limited. So the more we get, it doesn't satisfy us. There is still something inside that is hungry.
Yes.
Until we get the Lord Himself. So we satisfy our soul, which is in His image, which is a breath from Him. Satisfy our souls with the infinite Lord Himself. And this would be our ultimate satisfaction. I love that. I heard that about 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and I'm still
stuck with you. Yeah.
So beautiful reflection.
Yeah. So the other question I wanted to ask you, Dr. Samir, is given that the leading cause of death amongst teenagers and young adults is suicide. According to the statistics, close to 800,000 people die each year due to suicide, according to the World Health Organization. And the age group is between 15 to 44 years old, and this was released by the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. So the question I have for you is, what guidance would you give to a youth who may be concerned about a friend or a parent or their child who might be facing suicidal thoughts or of the sort?
I'll take you back to what I said early on. Once there is a thought of suicide, this is something to be taken serious, and this person needs to get in touch with either the spiritual father straight away or to help. and whether the help is a doctor, lifeline, Beyond Blue, you name it. But this is not something that should be taken lightly. Once suicide knocks at the door of the mind, it has to be taken serious and very serious. But if you're talking about how this can be prevented, well, the more I have this beautiful link with my Lord, the more I live a spiritual life, the more I have the satisfaction. And sometimes people think that to live a spiritual life, I have to cut down on anything and everything. So I should go and become a monk and do nothing in life but look at the desert. This is absolutely wrong. The Lord wants us to live and enjoy. He created everything around us beautiful to enjoy. But all the Lord wants us to do is to live with Him and enjoy. So we stir away from the wrongdoing, stir away from the sin. And there is a philosophy that every sin we're talking about, every sin mentioned in the commandments and in the Bible, New Testament, is actually damaging to the human being.
Of course, yeah.
Any sin is not just because the Lord doesn't want us, but it's because the sin is damaging to the human nature. So when the Lord is asking us not to sin, according to 1, 2, 3 commandments and others, this is for our satisfaction, psychological and physical. And look, for example, at those people who just open the door for any sexual encounter, and look at all the diseases they may encounter. So the idea is, when the Lord said, don't sin in terms of chastity, don't break your chastity, the Lord actually knows what He's talking about. He is the Creator, for goodness sake. He knows that this is good for the body. He knows that this is protecting the human being. And He said that I'm not stopping that, but it has its time. And we know that when people commit adultery, for example, at a young age, before marriage, we know that this is, from an emotional point of view, it's damaging. So the Lord knows what is good for us. And the Lord is just protecting us by the commandments. So the sin is not something that to satisfy Him. No, He doesn't need me not to sin. But He wants me, because I am His beloved creature. He wants me to love Him and follow His commandments for my sake at the end of the day, not for His sake. So the Lord doesn't want us not to live and enjoy, but to live and enjoy in a proper way, in a way that makes us enjoy the beaches and enjoy marriage and enjoy kids and enjoy sports and enjoy everything. There is nothing to stop us from enjoying everything around us, but observe His commandments for our sake. And this is the spiritual life, and people should not shy away from there. On the contrary, it's a pride to be connected spiritually with the Lord, plus the divine help that we get. And this divine help is not scientifically quantified and cannot be studied, cannot have a research to know how much we gain by having the divine help in our life, the divine satisfaction. No one can gain that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir. We're just going to go to a short break. Please enjoy. We'll be back in just a few moments.
I place my soul into your hands, my Lord Jesus Christ. Lead me, 'cause I depend on you. Lead me and I'll serve you. Please be my guide in every way. Be my guide, I won't go astray. Sanctify my heart and my needs until I see you, Lord. As you have always said, O source of all goodness, come unto me, O you weary. Come unto me and you will find rest. Come unto me, I am the way, I and life. When my life gets filled with worries and darkness overwhelms, the clouds will be dispersed away by you, O Prince of Peace. You are my shield, you are my hope, you are my strength, you are my goal, you are the perfect love, O Lord, of whom then shall I fear? As you have always said, O source of all goodness, come unto me, O you weary, come unto me, and you will find rest. Come unto me, I am the way, I am the truth and life. You are my shepherd, I'll not want, lead me to still waters. Restore my soul, I'm calling you, lead me to righteousness. Though I walk through the death valley, with you I will fear no evil. You are my comfort, staff and rod, all the days of my life. As you have always said, O source of all goodness, come unto me, O you weary, come unto me, and you will find rest. Come unto me, I am the way, I am the truth and life. Come take your cross and follow me, fear not, I am with thee. Cheer up, I've overcome the world, your tears I'll wipe away. I showed you my love on the cross, and if you're faithful unto death, I will give you eternal life. Come now and follow me, as you have always said, O source of all goodness. Come unto me, O you weary, come unto me, and you will find rest. Come unto me, I am the way, I am the truth and life.
Welcome back, viewers. Dr. Samir, every year on the 12th of September here in Australia we commemorate and almost celebrate the Are You OK Day. It's campaigned in workplaces, in schools, so to promote the question of asking, are you okay, when someone doesn't look okay. How important is asking this question, and also being on the lookout when you see a person that perhaps isn't okay, whether it's a loved one, a friend, or even a stranger?
I think it was a brilliant idea not to say it's the anti-suicide or the campaign anti-suicide day. It was a brilliant idea because mentioning suicide is not always a nice thing, and many people can take it quite it's a very sensitive topic, especially if the person thought about it, or they know somebody who thought about it, or somebody had an attempt in the past. It is a very touchy thing. So it was a brilliant idea to call it Are You OK Day. And I love that. And if you're saying how important, well, it's important to say that you're not on your own. We are all around you. If you need help, just speak up. Just raise your hand. Just say, I need help. I need a shoulder to cry on. I need someone to help me with all what I'm going through. And as I was saying at the beginning, this does not include people with severe mental illness. People with severe mental illness will not benefit much from that, or maybe a little bit, but not much. But people who are going to benefit much are the vast majority of people thinking of suicide, are people who have a little bit of defective coping skills, people who need a pat on the back, people who need a big hug, people who need to be connected with the social network support. In a Christian sense, people who need to remember that God is just one prayer away. So He's not far from us. And one prayer away, He will be always around us. And I know when people go into this dark mood of thinking suicide, and I'm talking about the many patients I have seen all my life, these people need just this quick reminder. And actually the lifelines and the suicide helpline and the many organizations around us are so much helping in such a sense. And in Australia we are lucky to have the Mental Health Act, and the Mental Health Act is very strong to help people in such a mood. And I have seen numerous people over the years who is saying, if it wasn't for the Mental Health Act, I would have done something wrong to myself. So this is when they make people involuntary and take them against them in hospital and give them treatment against their will. And when they pass through the depth of depression, they say, it was a life-saving. So we are lucky in many ways. Compared to 70, 80 years ago, we are quite lucky in this era. So let's make use of that. As Christians, we are double lucky. We are triple lucky because we have all these beautiful servants around us, starting from clergy and servants around us, who are just helping us to go over difficult times like this. And I remember talking to one of the priests some maybe 20 years ago in Melbourne, and I was asking him about something related to his time management, and he smiled at me and said, I'm working O. I'm working emergency because I can be called at any time, morning or night or weekend or Christmas Day or New Year's Eve, doesn't matter. I'm there all the time. And when people are in difficulties, I have to be there for them. So that's why we are so lucky to belong to this church and to belong to a devoted and dedicated clergy like this.
Yes, and I can testify to that because I always call you upon us if there's something there, and if it's not. So I do agree, we're very, very blessed to have that service. One of the questions I did want to ask though, what is our responsibility if we see someone, and maybe a perfect stranger, that looks like they're not in a good place, and simply is it a good idea to simply walk up and say, are you okay? Because that might be the one thing that stops a person, or at least from their perspective shows that there is love in the world.
But if you don't mind, if I can take it up a notch. After saying, are you okay, and they respond to you, from like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and they were saying how they encountered an experience of someone who opened up to them and said that they had suicidal thoughts and they were self-harming, but they didn't know what to say, how to respond. So if we take it up a notch, and I thought about it and I wouldn't know how to respond either. So what course of action should we take, or how do we respond? The person on the receiving end, what should they do, or what should they say? How do they deal with someone who opens up to them?
Okay, I'll have two answers here.
So this is the stranger, this is the friend.
Okay, the first one, sometimes it's very hard to know if the person is thinking of suicide. It's very, very hard. And even in a clinical sense, there are many studies to show that even as clinicians, even as psychiatrists and psychologists, it's very hard to know. Even running through the questionnaire that we call the risk assessment, even though it's very hard to know. And if someone has this kind of deep feeling and deep planning, sometimes it's very hard to know what they have in their mind. So from a clinical point of view, and I'm talking as a clinician now, it is very hard to know. But from a friendly point of view, if I know someone and I see him every day because he is my neighbor or my colleague at work or at school, and I can see that he is not in his normal thing, I think it goes without saying that I would go and ask, what's wrong with you today? It looks like you didn't have good sleep or what? Are you going through any difficulty? Do you need any help? I think this is human nature, and this is what we do all the time.
Sure.
And the "are you okay" day per year, I think could be every day.
Every day.
Yeah,
That's what I always
yeah.
used to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for people who I know well. And I still remember many years ago when someone told me that they were walking the street and they had a difficult day, and people would stop them at the street and ask, "Are you okay? You don't look okay.
Isn't that
Do you need
wonderful?
any help?" Yeah, beautiful. And people would offer money, would offer to take them places or take them home or stop a taxi. So I think humans are genuine in general, and they just ask if the person appears to be not in his right frame of mind.
Sure.
But coming to your question, which is, so what if somebody says, yes, I'm not okay, I want to kill myself? What should I do? I think, as we were saying early on, we have many avenues now. Many avenues. Even if the person doesn't know the helpline and the suicide helpline and kids line and everything else, the person can just dial 000.
But is there, like, if someone opens up to you, is there a series of questions that you should ask, or like, or something that you should say? Because sometimes I think it might be hard to tell the person, "Oh, you need to go seek help."
I agree with you. And it depends on how acute the issue is. If someone is saying, "Oh, look, I was like this last month, but I'm much better now. I don't need to dial 000. But I need to advise that they need to seek help, spiritual, medical. I need to ask them to do that. And if maybe I can help them to ring a clinic or ring their father of confession or ring someone, so I help them to take the first step if they did not do that already. But if someone is telling me, "Look, I'm in a very, very deep place, I'm going to do it," I don't think I can tell them, "Let's go and talk to Abuna," because Abuna himself, in a situation like this, will struggle how to cope with someone who has a clear plan, going to be executed in the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Abuna himself will struggle. So we need to be clear. Emergencies are emergencies.
Yeah.
And emergencies have 000.
Yes.
So we need to resort to emergency.
Okay, that makes sense.
It actually happened a few months ago in one of the hospitals I work in. And someone told, there were two patients and they were kind of friends or being acquaintance, if you wish. And one told the other, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it today because I'm in a bad place. And this other person took it light. And 5 minutes after, this person was hanging.
Oh, wow.
And it was a big shock to the whole staff, as well as to this other patient.
Who took it lightly.
Yeah, who took it lightly. Thankfully, the person didn't die and he was saved and everything else, and continued their treatment and everything went okay. But this other person, although it's about maybe approaching 5 months now, she's my patient and she's still struggling with that she didn't jump on the spot and do something.
Yes.
So when somebody gets this message that there is something horrible about to happen, we don't joke. This is beyond a joke. You have to act and act immediately.
Yes, and of course when it's not that situation but maybe someone who's a little bit down, on the Are You OK, they do have 4 steps, and the 4 steps are: 1, ask; 2, listen; 3, encourage action, which is what you were saying, Dr. Samir; and 4, check in. So doing the first 3 steps and leaving number 4 could be quite disastrous because we don't know how they're going to progress. And then, of course, as Dr. Samir is saying, we need to really identify when it's severe and when it's not, to not have another unfortunate situation like that.
Yeah, that's very true. But as I was saying, usually people are genuine and usually people talk. And sometimes all what it takes for someone to change their plan is someone asking. If someone is asking, they kind of pour their heart out and they don't carry on their plans because someone was interested, asked, and shared their time and being genuine This is very impressive to someone who is in deepest dark depression.
Yeah, I remember once a church father telling me that when someone has the ability to verbalize or vocalize their thoughts, it's like as if you were in a room and you're a bird flying round and round and round, and you get caught in your thoughts. As soon as you can articulate them, the bird is free. So it's a relief to be able to do that, and probably more so for women as well, because we like to talk very much.
I know that.
And we're very emotional as well. But all good.
So I guess my final question to you, Dr. Samir, is personally I see a counsellor, and so she's Christian as well, and she always says to me, obviously the advice that I give to you being another Christian, it would be different to the advice I would give to an atheist. So the question I have for you, as a Christian and a psychiatrist, when you encounter someone who's experienced a loss of a loved one, what words of comfort or what should you say to that person who has someone that they know that they've lost to suicide?
To start with, I admire your courage, Robert. You're a wonderful man.
Thank you, Doctor.
To say in public you're saying a counsellor, I wish that everybody is like you.
I think it's really important, to be honest.
Can I clone you?
We'd love to clone you.
Yeah. Okay. Second, the aim of therapy is many things. Creating hope is very high up on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And creating hope for someone who is not a believer is sometimes difficult.
Of course, yeah.
But somebody who has the belief is much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So to adhere to the church concept, life, to the church and spiritual life is so much a life-saving. Even if I don't have depression, it's a life-saving because it's giving me the eternity. So it is life-saving at the end of the day. So reality is, yes, there is a little difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you a story that has happened to me personally almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was working in a certain hospital, and this is somebody who used to come and be angry with the world, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And she used to come maybe for a good 2 years or so, every fortnight or 3 weeks or a month, and be extremely angry with the world and talking about self-harm all the time. And she went to many hospitals and had so many treatments and so on. And I used to, again, because she is not a believer, I used to try all the techniques written in books.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I told her, but if you kill yourself, do you know where you're going to go? And she looked at me straight in the eyes, stared at me and said, don't shuffle religion down my throat.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what does it mean, because this is not accepted by the medical board. So I knew that she might go out and complain about me.
Yeah.
But I said, look, I'm not shoving anything down your throat. I'm just raising another avenue that you may want to think about. I'll tell you the truth, I forgot everything about it. She disappeared for about maybe 3 or 4 months. And then she came, and I remember it was after Easter. And she came and told me, Doc, you're going to be proud of me today. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. So you're not thinking bad things and stuff? I said, no. I went to the church.
Oh, wow.
And I had confession and received communion.
Wow.
It's amazing. I just sent shivers down my spine.
I was gobsmacked. I didn't know how to answer. And I just felt that the Lord worked. Continuation of the story, that 4 days after this meeting, she got a stroke and died.
Oh, wow.
So it just tells you that even people who are atheists, sometimes mentioning God is not a bad idea. I learned personally from that. This was 10 years ago, maybe more. So, talking about religion is actually a fantastic hope. that she can offer people.
Mm-hmm.
What else can offer hope on this planet more than God, eternity, the beautiful life after death that we all struggle to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful to live with God on earth, let alone after earth. So it's a beautiful thing. And many people look at my desk, and I have a cross just in front of me, and they tell me, we know you're going to talk about Christ. And I say, no, it doesn't have to be about Christ, but if you only think about Him, that's a good idea. And I don't know, I've seen thousands of people, so I don't know, has this story been repeated or not, been repeated with other practitioners or not, I don't really know. But what I know, that the Lord is always there on the well in Samaria, waiting for a Samaritan woman.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
So beautiful, Dr. Samir. And, you know, I do know of a friend who has actually had a stay in a hospital where they were treating addictions, depression, suicide. And one of the remedies they offered, even in that hospital, as a general thing, was some sort of spiritual, faith-based belief, because, as you said, it's the hope. And then we look at the words in the Bible where our Lord says, don't be, be ready to give a reason for the hope that's in you. And now from your example, Dr. Samir, we can see just how important it is. It might be just one thing. Like we plant the seed, but our God does the...
Planting the seed, that's the main part, yeah.
Yeah, so beautiful. And, I remember once I was seeing a psychologist for a short time as well, and one morning I walked in and said hello to her, and she turned to me with a smile on her face and she said, it must be so wonderful to wake up every morning and know you are unconditionally loved by Heavenly Father. And I don't even know whether she was Christian or not, to be honest, because I never asked that. But of course in my conversations, I love to mention Christ. But for someone to pick that up and just to bring that out because they see a smile or something in your behaviour, I think is so powerful, and that's God's grace and His love. So I think we will wrap this up now because we're running on time. But Dr. Samir, it is our great blessing. Thank you so much for making the time to come all the way from Melbourne to be with us to share on this very sensitive topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor. Can I thank CYC?
Yes, absolutely. We should all thank CYC.
Actually, there are so many channels. I don't know how many around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if they have the courage and the guts to talk about sensitive issues like depression and spirituality and the difference, and suicide in a spiritual sense. It takes the courage of people who are self-confident and very Christian to do something like this. So I thank you on behalf of the audience.
Oh, thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, and thank you, Rob. Dr. Samir, this is the second time Rob has been so open and so brave, and we love him dearly. And I think it's just a testament of Christ in our life that we can do all things through Him. So thank you very much, audience. God bless you, be with you. We thank you, and for anyone who has gone through a difficult situation, we'll keep you in our prayers. Please stay tuned. In another 2 weeks, we're going to have our season finale, and we'd love to have you join us. God bless you, and good night.